There's Something About Riley is the 4th episode of the first season of So Little Time, and I really liked this episode. We have several aspects of the narrative, and I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail, but there might be some spoilers, so I'm just going to give a spoiler warning just in case. And the bit that was the most fascinating to me is the fact that there are bushfires. It's fire season, and there is there's an alert for a bushfire, and honestly, it's terrifying. It's a kind of situation I would absolutely hate to be in. I think the episode provided what I think are good tips for this kind of scenario. Of course, I don't live somewhere where this is a potential danger, so I could be wrong, the tips could be terrible, but certainly from my perspective, it seemed like a really beneficial narrative to cover, and I think it also seemed quite kind of scary, the fact that they already have systems in place, because this is a routine thing. Obviously, that is a brilliant thing that there are measures in place for when this happens, but that kind of indicates that this is a recurring problem. And the thing that really kind of would scare me the most in this scenario is the scene, and I guess this is a spoiler as it happens towards the end, is when they're all gathered at the school because it's deemed to be a safe location away from their houses, which are too close to the fire. And just the thought of gathering away from home, knowing that so many people could be affected by this, I think it did a good job of making it seem really scary, which I think is kind of the point. And we have some firefighter characters, and they're kind of objectified a little bit. But objectifying firefighters isn't the worst of this. There's the one moment at the beginning of this episode that I thought was seriously inappropriate for the target audience. And this is when they're in the cafeteria and Larry is ogling Riley, and he calls her, I think, a goddess or something. And in that moment, the camera focuses on her as she tips her head back and pours Go-Gurt into her mouth. If you're in the UK, it's kind of like a froob. It's a yogurt in a tube. And the white yogurt drips into her mouth. And I won't go into explicit detail, but it's very clear to me what they were trying to indicate there. And I think that sexualization is completely inappropriate for the target audience of this episode. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I doubt it. And I did find that to be rather inappropriate for the moment. But other than that, it's not that an inappropriate episode, but that did take me by surprise. And I will now be on the lookout for that kind of inappropriate content going forward to see if this is a recurring theme or if it's a one-off. I won't go on about it too much, but I don't think it belonged in this episode. The rest of the episode is not too bad. Larry is persuading his friend Tony to make him seem like he's cool and dateable, obviously trying to persuade Riley that he's somebody she would want to date. But actually, I won't say exactly what happens. I know I said spoilers, I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail, but Tony takes advantage of the situation and takes advantage a little bit of Riley, and Riley ends up standing up for Larry, and it's really beautiful to see, and really, I genuinely don't know if Larry and Riley are going to be together by the end of the series. I don't want to know. I want to discover as things develop. But it was really nice to see her standing up for him and talking back to Tony when he was being rather inappropriate and just not very nice. So I think we have several things going on in this episode that are really beneficial, some really great messages, some really great moments with various characters. The yogurt moment, we absolutely could have done without. As a young child or a preteen or a young teenager watching this, would I have read that into that? I don't know. I feel like when I was the age that this came out, this aired in 2001, and I would have been 9, so probably not. I feel like watching it as an adult, I'm reading something different into it. I'm not going to keep going on about this. I just genuinely wasn't expecting it to be quite so explicit. And regardless of what age I am, Mary-Kate and Ashley were older at the time. They would have been about 15 and maybe 14, depending on when this was filmed. And there are adults in the room, adults filming this, adults directing this. I just think it's inappropriate. I won't go on about it again unless it comes up in a future episode. That aside, There's Something About Riley is definitely a good episode with some really great moments. And I think specifically for me, with some great moments with Riley. That's not to say Chloe wasn't interesting, but definitely Riley was very fascinating here. And ultimately, the yogurt aside, I rather enjoyed the episode.